Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Fine.
Yeah.
How is Lusaka then?
Lusaka is hot, very hot actually.
Very hot also.
Extremely hot.
Okay,
Yeah, terrible, terrible stuff. Uh,
sure.
and how is Livingston?
Here is the hottest. West you are near 40 and above degrees Celsius.
40?
Yes,
No.
telling you.
Hey.
Yes. So when I hear you complaining from Lusaka, I know it's just somewhere around 25.
Oh, but I'm sure your office has an aircon, right?
No, they don't have, they're not effective. They are there, but not effective.
Okay,
Yes.
I see. Um,
That's
I'm,
where it was stated.
yeah, I'm not sure, by the way, if you have contact details for our other colleagues that are supposed to be part of this interaction. Are you able to maybe
Okay, they have done.
reach out to people like
Cecilia
I
is
see
in.
Cecilia is online, but the other colleagues that should be attending. I always encourage students that may not necessarily be doing exams, but probably at a time when, at a point in their dissertation when they're writing up or they're about to submit or something, to attend these events, because most of the most of the comments that will be made are quite useful, beneficial, if you will. So I'm going to suggest that in the interest of time here, I'm going to suggest that maybe we start. So I'm not sure if you got if all of you got my email, but what I did was I decided we were going to use the schedule that was shared by the head of department. So we'll follow
Okay.
through with that same schedule, and we could have easily organized the presentations in order of like the last name or something, but we just use the schedule shared by the head of department. You will notice that you'll be the third speaker, Adrian, day after tomorrow. And so I'd actually reached out to the head of department to find out how much time, or rather to just clarify on the time given to candidates, because I was hinting to him to say the one of the most recent presentations that I attended, and I've just opened up a memo that was circulated a while back here. Candidates were actually given 20 minutes. So, but he tells me he clarified with the assistant dean postgraduate, and so you have 10 minutes to do this actually. Now, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of you making sure that you stick to the time, and it's in fact one of the reasons why I always insist that colleagues that are defending their dissertations or thesis rehearse, right? So one of the reasons why we do this is because, you see, you can fail the oral exam. I actually sat in a session, a board of examiners session where the students failed the exam, right? Worst case is for you to find yourself in a situation where the 10 minutes has elapsed and you haven't even gone halfway through, so just take that into consideration.
So there are no injury times?
No. An exam, if the exam says it's 10 minutes, you have 10 minutes to present, and then they allocate, I think it's open-ended, they'll give the general public first to be given an opportunity to ask questions, and then thereafter, so that would be anybody in the audience, right, other than the examiners. Thereafter, each of the three examiners will actually quiz you based on what they read in your manuscript itself. Yeah. So I'm trying to see if there's anything to discuss about the Viva Voce here. Yeah, so things like, the Viva Voce exam shall be mandatory. So if you go through the guidelines, the DRGS guidelines, this is where I'm reading this stuff from. Go to section 10.11.1. It's mandatory. You are supposed to bring, according to this, you shall bring a copy of the manuscript. Now, because this is going to be virtual, you obviously want to make sure that you have it readily available, right? Because examiners will tend to ask questions about the contents of the report. Can you go to page 20? Can you go to page 100? You want to make sure you have this available. Yeah, so the other thing is don't be alarmed. I can't defend you. Even if I know that what you're talking about is being misrepresented, this is an exam, I can't do anything. So you want to make sure that because you have full ownership of this. Most of you have been working on this for more than 2 years now, right? So you want to make sure that if there's need for you to revise certain portions of your manuscript, like for instance the methodological approach, results, and the conclusions and recommendations, you want to make sure that this is done. Anyways, that's okay. I think we can proceed then, I suppose. The other thing is, I attended IDA exams again. I think some of you were in attendance where I think there was a candidate who was presenting from, I'm not sure if that was Livingstone, by the way, but it's sheer coincidence, Adrian. And the connection was so bad, it was on her end. You want to make sure that on the day of the Viva Voce, have a backup device. There's load shedding. There are brownouts all across the country here. You want to make sure that you at least borrow a laptop if you have to. Make sure it's fully charged, so that when the time comes for you to present and there's no power, you don't use that as an excuse. At the very least, just make sure that your phone is fully charged as well, so that you can, because it is possible for you to present from your phone, by the way. Just put it in landscape or something, I'm trying to think of anything else I've left out. Other than that, that's it. So I'm going to give Adrian an opportunity to present. It's going to be first. I think I've shared the schedule. So we will start with Adrian, and then we shall have Matildah, then Cecilia, and then finally Dokowe. Again, if I were you, I would again rehearse the presentation. After today, just make sure you do a rehearsal. There will be comments that will be shared with you. Just make sure you do a rehearsal of the talk itself. I will try as much as possible to record the session so that you have access to the recorded session of today's event. But again, I cannot emphasize this enough here. Just make sure you adequately prepare. I would hate it if I've never worked with a student who has been told that the outcome, right, is a resubmission, or the outcome is a pass with well, we have had moderate corrections here, or a fail. So I don't expect anything from anything of that sort from any of you. You just want to make sure you take charge. I'm very confident of the work that you did, but as with most things, the packaging is very important. So how you present the work, you want to make sure that I hope all of you towards the end, you explicitly mention, maybe at the beginning, you explicitly mention to say there's a publication that is based on this dissertation, or there are publications based on this dissertation, which were published, at this sort of venues or something. Anyway, so I'm going to hand over to you, Adrian, I'll unshare, and then you can share, and then we'll start. I will be timing all of you. I'll also be I'll try as much as possible to take notes. So over to you, Adrian. That's again a bad idea, by the way, and I would like to insist that you not do that. If you do not use Google Slides, right? It's a cloud-based service. If you have issues with your connection or with Google Slides, it'll be difficult. So what I want to suggest is just download the PDF version of this and then use the PDF version.
Okay.
It's in your best interest, yeah.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much for this wonderful time. To present, Adrian Chisale is my name. Topic, investigating approaches for automatically generating metadata for electronic thesis and dissertation for higher education institutions. Supervisor, Dr. Lighton Phiri. Outline, background of the study, statement of the problem, objectives, significance of the study, literature review, methodology, limitations, findings, conclusion, and recommendations and references. Introduction. The need for high quality metadata is a necessity for all digital objects. That's according to PAC 29. However, the increased rate at which ETDs are being generated requires that much emphasis is placed on ETD metadata due to the heterogeneous sources that provide these ETDs. The need is further necessitated by the increase in the number of downstreams and downstream aggregated services that harvest ETD metadata at global scale. Problem statement. In the year 2018, Zambia launched and is currently implementing the National ETD Portal project, which intends to aggregate ETD metadata from all higher education institutions. This metadata requires effective ways of searching and browsing. This calls for a standardized approach in metadata creation from all higher education institutions, institution repositories. Other scholars like Solomon and the Phiri 2018 found that poor ETD metadata is among the problems that the global downstream services are facing. However, this extent has not been looked into from Zambian higher education institutions repository, as most of them are a recent establishment. Hence, the need for this research, the need for conducting of this research. Objectives. This research had 3 objectives. First, to identify higher education institutions that have a functional and interoperable institutional repositories in Zambia. Second, to determine the relative quality of ETD metadata originating from higher education institutions in Zambia. The third is to investigate the sources of missing metadata elements for automated generated using natural language techniques. Significance of the study. It is hoped that this study will help to attain interoperability across IRs, and at the same time to develop standardized application profile for Zambian IRs and many others. Reviews of literature. It was according to Yusuf Finenji, Ifeji, and Emmanuel. In their findings, in their research, observed that development of IRs in most African countries is still in its infancy stage, making most of African researchers unpopular and recognized in academic fraternity. However, they focused on the implementation of IRs. Similarly, Wigley and Gouch and Park 2010 observed increased need for adoption of a new metadata standard in managing EE resources. However, the focus was on doubling core metadata schema. POW 2010 also identified the diversity of resources that requires specialized metadata schemas. However, the focus was doubling core metadata schema. Dokowe, Kim, and Ross equally observed the need for advanced approaches in generating metadata through automated processes. the focus was on support vectors machine algorithms. However, on 2018, Phiri also observed that there is lack of interoperability amongst the IRIs in Global South. The focus was on visibility of research output. Suleiman equally observed the challenges that faces the federated services, among which is poor metadata. But however, this has not been looked into from Zambian perspective, as these were new. They are new establishments. Methodologies. It is worth noting that this research was guided by cross-industry process for data mining project model, and this model uses 6 phases. And in this research, we only used 3 of them, which therefore helped us to come up with a very good understanding of our project. For start population, librarian in charge of IRS and all ETDs metadata from institution repositories in Zambia. Sample size, we had 2 librarians per higher education institutions and all ETD metadata from all higher education institutions. Sampling techniques, 2 total population was used, purposive sampling, stratified sampling. However, it is worth noting that total population sampling was used to get data for first objective, which is to identify the higher education institutions that offers postgraduate programs and also that have institution repositories. For purposive sampling, we use this to identify system librarians that manages IRIs, and at the same time stratified sampling. It was also used to get data for quality analysis, at the same time try to understand the location of the missing ETD MOS, the de facto standard developed by Network Digital Library of this dissertation. Instruments, structured questionnaires, which was used for the first objectives, similar to same structured phone interviews, which was also used for the same first objective. Then Open Archive Initiative Protocol for metadata harvester 2 was also used to download ETD metadata, and at the same time, for those higher education institutions that never activated the Open Archive Initiative Protocol, the manual downloading was also used. At the same time, content analysis, which was used to get information about the location of the missing ETD MOS metadata schema from ETD manuscripts and also from the policy documents for postgraduate studies. Data analysis, Google Sheet and Microsoft Google Sheet was used to do the analysis for our research. Limitations, it was just limited within the higher education institutions that offers postgraduate programs. Findings, the first objective, here research found that we had 61 higher education institutions, among which distribution was 52 private, 9 public, of which 8 offered postgraduate programs, 28 also offered postgraduate programs from private sector. When we looked at the status of institution repositories in Zambia, we observed that about 51 higher education institutions did not implement the institution repositories in Zambia, leaving only 10 who successfully implemented. Now, when we looked at functionality status of these repositories, we observed that only 7 were functional, 2 non-functional, and 1 had its content, ETD content missing. Okay, when we looked at the interoperability aspect of these repositories, we also found that 80% of these repositories had not activated the data provider, which is Open Archive Initiative Protocol for metadata harvester. At the same time, we only had 2 that activated. For objective 2, where we determined the collective quality of metadata originating from the higher education institutions in Zambia, situation analysis from UNZA, University of Zambia, IRA, it was observed that UNZA had 4,003 records, ETD records, of which there are some missing ETD metadata records observed from this figure, this figure, we had the subject, description, publisher. All these had, and also coverage together with thesis.degree had all their thesis ETDMS metadata missing. Similar analysis was done from University of Lusaka, where we found that contributor, publisher, format, and the thesis.degree ETD metadata schema were equal also missing out of the 7 ETD elements that were found, which were in the repository. Okay. The similar analysis was done to all the 5 higher education institutions, and research discovered that all the 5 in higher education institutions were not ETDMS compliant to the de facto standard, specifically for ETDs. Well, when investigating the sources of missing metadata elements, we also observed that we used the content analysis to understand the location of these missing elements, ETD elements. Among them, it was found that there was consistency in some higher education institutions, repositories. However, some details were missing in some higher education institutions. As observed here, we only have acknowledgement, like for example, for the University of Zambia, the supervisor element was only visible in acknowledgement and certificate of approval, similar to Chitumbo University. This is different to other higher education institutions whose these details were also appearing on the title page in that manner. So in conclusion, the identification of these sources of missing ETD metadata present opportunity for automatic generation of, I beg your pardon? The conclusion, the identification of sources of missing ETD metadata provide an opportunity for automatic generation of these missing elements. At the same time, as a part of current and future work, natural language processing modules are being developed to automatically generate missing metadata elements. All higher education institutions are not compliant with ETDMS, the de facto standard for the following thesis and dissertations. Recommendations: it is recommended that all institution repositories conform to the same standard as to promote interoperability amongst IRs in Zambia. It is also hoped that all higher education institutions should be compliant with de facto ETDMS. It also, all higher education institutions must adopt the de facto metadata standard, that is specialized schema. There is also need to design the intelligence system that would automatically generate the missing ETD metadata for improved visibility. Thank you very much. We have references to the study.
All right. Thank you very much. I wanted to start off by by saying that it took you 12 minutes and 25 seconds, almost 12 minutes and 26 seconds actually, because it's 98 milliseconds. Well, let's just say 12 minutes and 25 seconds. That's a bit of a problem because you see, you need to understand that they will stop you. They will. It's an exam, right? They have said it's 10 minutes. The moment you get to the 10-minute mark, they will stop you. And this is what you want to try and avoid here. Now, there's a trick, right? There's a trick in terms of what you can do. I mean, obviously, I will share the recording here. What you want to do is you want to go and play back the recording and try and figure out exactly where it is you can reclaim time from. I can already see that you wasted time on literature review. That's not a very relevant part of what you're doing here, right? The oral exam itself. if I were you now, I was actually marking how long it took you to, or how much time you spent on different sections. I think literature review took you almost 2 minutes or something. I could be wrong here. That's unnecessary. You should probably spend no more than 30 seconds. You just focus on key aspects of the literature review. Just tell people, right? We reviewed work that is aligned with blah, 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 right? These particular thematic areas. And some of the key takeout points are these. That's it. So that you focus your time on the more important things of this presentation, this oral exam. The methodology, the results and discussion, and the conclusion. Right? Now, before I invite people to ask questions here, I want to start off with trivial things here. If you look at, you want to go through the slides. Sometimes what you want to do is, if you have colleagues that are presenting, you can, in fact, colleagues in the lab, right? There are students that, are not going to be presenting. What you can do is you can ask them to just quickly go through your presentation slides and make sure that they help you spot trivial things like formatting issues. If you go to the last slide, for instance, there's missing content, I noted. The conclusion. Right? Automatically generation of missing what, right? There's trivial things, but things like the fact that your bullet points, some of them have a full stop at the end, some of them don't. If you go to slide page number 3, for instance, you'll notice inconsistencies in the way that the third bullet point, for instance, casing is different. Some bullet points have a full stop, some don't. Not necessary at all. You see, you want to listen. This is a combination of things that you've been doing. In your case, Adrian, you've been doing this since 2021 or something? 2022?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Right? We should take pride in some of these things we're doing. Spend a lot of time making sure that the aesthetics are right. Right? Anyways, the more pressing issues, though, right, is, and I worry here, if you go to objectives, where are the research questions?
I've missed it.
You can't. We're talking about research here. You can't present at an oral exam without research questions. People won't take you seriously. Right? Very important. Even if it means you just adding an additional slide and just say, these are the research objectives and these are the research questions, which are essentially just a mirror of the research objectives. At least you're telling people that careful thinking has gone into you preparing this. You can't do that. All right? I was going to suggest, I'd taken note of the fact that I was suggesting that your literature review includes a very crucial literature that you surveyed, right? The implementation of the South African ETD portal, because in essence, the main motivating factor for what you're doing is we're trying to set up the Zambia National ETD portal. And so maybe at the very least just include it in the slides or something. Back to your objectives here. When you're talking about objectives, you must first of all explicitly state what the main objective is. I don't know if I missed it here, but there's no main objective here. And then you state that these are the specific research objectives. There must be a main objective, right? What is the main objective? It must be there. Do you understand this?
Sure, sir.
Yeah. If we go to the methodology, I was a bit disappointed because all of the people I work with, right, I always tell them to say, you see, if you want to, I always tell people, go to the next one. I always tell people, say, if you don't want people to get lost in terms of what it is you're presenting, I've commented this. I comment this when you're doing when you're drafting your proposal. I also do this when you're doing your proposal presentation. We do this when you're writing your chapter 3. I always say that the way you present a methodology, especially if you have standalone specific objectives, is there must be dedicated objectives for each standalone objective, because the things that you're doing are different. Right? What's the first objective?
Was to identify the higher education institutions that implemented the.
You're interested in identifying institutions with functional repositories, right? By the way, I don't want to forget this because I didn't write this down. I mentioned it's very important that you mention explicitly, either at the beginning or at the end, this work resulted in your case. This work resulted in 2 publications that were presented at international publication venues. Then you state, the very first objective was presented at whatever conference. The other one, whatever conference. Very important that you do that. But back to the issue of methodology, right? You see, if the first objective was to do with identification of higher education institutions with functional repositories, as an examiner, as somebody in the audience, I'll ask to say, for that particular objective, how exactly did the OAI-PMH manual downloading come into play then? The problem with the way you're presenting your methodological approach here is you're all over the place, right? It's almost like you're telling people that the things that you're projecting on page number 12 here apply to all the specific objectives, which is not the case. This is the reason why I always tell you to say, separate the specific objectives. For the first objective, you state the methodological approach. What was the target population? What was the sampling technique? What was the sample size? What procedure was followed? Then people won't sit there and wonder, say, but when it comes to trying to find out functional repositories, how is the OAI-PMH relevant? Do you understand this? And again, you see when you get to a stage where you're presenting work at master's level, right? Clarity is extremely important. I'm teaching on behalf of Professor Kandela. I think most of you probably are aware that Professor Kandela has been unwell for quite some time since December. And so we've had to sort of like take up some of the courses I was teaching. And I'm teaching the undergraduate research methods course. And one of the things we're discussing today actually has to do with clarity and accuracy in the way we are describing things like the methodology. When you tell somebody that the sample size was 2 librarians per HEI, it's difficult to know exactly what the sample size was, right? Because we don't know how many HEIs you're talking about here. Why can't you just explicitly state to say, we targeted X number of, or the sample size was X, instead of 2 librarians per HEI? What does that mean? How many HEIs? You're leaving it on to the person who is maybe in the audience to try and do the math, right? Maybe they will ask you how many HEIs, and if you tell them 30, then they'll be able to figure out that the sample size was 60 or something. Just write the actual number, right? Don't write anything to do with 2 librarians per HEI. Sample size is a sample size. Has to be an absolute number. Yeah? Maybe, and the thing is, it will be confusing if you leave it the way it is. So when you detach these 3 objectives and you start explaining the methodological approach for each of the 3 objectives, what you want to do is explicitly state the inclusion and exclusion criteria if they apply here. If they apply here. If they don't, in terms of sampling here, you just say we targeted all HEIs in Zambia, right? At least those that, not all HEIs actually, those that have accredited with HEA, because you went to the HEA website essentially to get the list. Yeah?
Yes.
And then you say we were targeting 2 librarians per HEI. After you state what the sample size was. So this brings us to a question of, again, because this is all over the place here, you're saying the sampling technique used was total population sampling. Really? I don't know, but you want to, I guess it would be a lot clearer here, Mr. Sally, if you detach the 3 specific objectives and you start explaining the methodological approach from the perspective of each objective. Because you agree with me that if you go to the very last objective, there's nothing like 2 librarians that were involved there, because what you did was content analysis, right? You were looking at policy documents. You were looking at, you were analyzing actual dissertations. And this, by the way, I've mentioned to you that that's the most interesting thing about what you did for your master's, right? But it doesn't come out here. None of your slides include like a very nice screenshot that showcases a section of a dissertation where you were looking for this information. You understand this?
Sure.
And the other thing is the golden thread is extremely important, right? It starts from the objective, the specific objective, the research questions, methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion. Everything must be connected. So in effect, what I want to suggest is when you isolate the methodological approach for the different specific objectives, you want to make sure that in the title, or maybe as a first bullet point, you explicitly state the specific objective. Say, the methodology for specific objective number 1 was centered around doing ABCD. And what we did in terms of methodology was we followed this procedure here. Anyways, the other thing I took a note of here is on the limitations, right? If you go to the limitations, it's not just that this was focused only on higher education institutions that offer postgraduate programs, but you also, the selection criteria was HEIs. By the way, HEI has already been defined here. You don't have to redefine it here. Just use the acronym or abbreviations when you've already defined them. But the other limitation is that you were mostly interested in institutions with functional, higher education institutions with functional IRs, which you have there, specifically those with functional IRs, which is fine. But maybe just you can add those as 2 limitations. So first, because an institution may have a functional IR, but they don't offer postgraduate programs. So those are already 2 limitations. You want to probably mention that, I don't know, there's probably other things to do with the methodological approach here. I don't know if issues to do with, well, maybe not, lack of policy may not be a limitation, but that's fine.
Yeah. Doc, Doc.
Yes, sir.
In fact, I disputed all this. Now, what made me to is issues of time that I was worried about.
Yeah, but when you split them up, the thing is, splitting them up is important because it will help you talk about the correct things, right? You see, if you look at if you play back the presentation, when I share this, if you play back your presentation, you'll notice that your methodological approach does not make sense. It's about identifying what is important here, right? Instead of wasting time talking about, oh, this is the outline, we'll talk about, if you go back to the outline, I was keeping track of this. You spent 22 seconds just on the title, I think, the title slide here, unnecessary. You spent, I don't know if it was 43 minutes here. We'll talk about the background. So just say, this is the outline, and then you move on, right? On the title page, you just mentioned, my name is Adrian Chisale, the title of my dissertation is blah, 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 I was supervised by Lighton, Phiri. You move on, right? 10 seconds, you're done. On the outline, 10 seconds or less, you're done. Because you're just telling people, this presentation is going to follow this outline. And you move on. On the introduction, you just mention background work that is relevant to what you're talking about. So again, I will encourage you to go back to the recorded presentation, which I will share. I think I'm recording. I hope it's going to come out just fine. And then you look at where exactly you're going to get time from. There are things that are extremely relevant and things that are not relevant at all. On the introduction, if there is little time, just focus on background information as to why, the motivating factors behind this research, right? The fact that we're working towards implementing a national ETD portal. You don't have to talk about PAC, and maybe you can mention things to do with the importance of quality metadata and all that. But you spent a great deal of time. I think you spent, I could be wrong here, but did you not spend maybe almost close to a minute or two? I don't know. I was taking note of the labs here, but anyways, the other thing here is the results. If you go to your results, you see, the reason I was talking about the golden thread is extremely important. When you're talking about the results, well, I think the results is fine because you actually do have the objective explicitly stated here. I think the only comment I have is instead of a table, I want to use a bar plot there. That's a bad idea, right? It's pointless for you to start using tables. You just use a bar plot, showcasing the, and you can easily have, there's fancy ways of doing these bar plots, right? Where each, on a bar plot for each, well, this is number of institutions and, okay, this is, it may be in, let's see here. Okay, I was going to suggest that you have bars for each of these universities, but maybe it may not, maybe this is just fine. I see why you did this. It's because you have a number of universities. That's fine. So this is okay. This is okay. The other comment I had was to do with, let's see. I think I've already made mention of the fact that in the last objective, if you look at the last objective, I made a comment when we were preparing the, if you remember, the ETD 2023 paper, right? I told you to say, if you look at the novelty part of what you're doing, it's the last research question. But if you look at your results, right, you're focusing on things that they are important, quite all right. But if you go up to your results, but you don't really spend a lot of time explaining things to do with the content analysis, for instance, right? You only talk about policies here. It would be nice if you included, what you want to do is you want to include the screenshot of a dissertation and just mention to say the content analysis in part included us doing this, right? You have this slide quite right, but you didn't really spend quite a great deal of time to explain all of this. And you see, the unfortunate thing about you, by the way, unlike the others, the unfortunate thing about what you're doing is it's very obscure, right? It's not the sort of, so it's a sort of work that very few people will be able to understand, the people that are going to be in the audience. And so it becomes important for you to make sure that your explanation is as simple as possible. People need to understand that the goal here was to try and figure out how best metadata can be automatically extracted, missing metadata. You're telling a story here, and the story needs to make sense here. But anyways, other than that, I think this is good enough. I am biased here. I think you've done some pretty incredible work, I'll be honest with you. And it speaks for itself, right? You have 2 publications based on this work. So, I mean, the last part here where you're presenting a summary of your dissertation needs a lot of careful thinking here. You want to package this properly so that A, people understand what you're doing, and B, so that your presentation makes logical sense. Okay. And also cherry pick. You want to make sure that you don't waste time on irrelevant things. Focus on what is important. Research questions, methodology, results, conclusions, and recommendations. This is where you should be spending a lot of time. I'm going to invite people to maybe ask questions, things that I may have left out. We are here to help our colleague who is presenting day after tomorrow. We want to make sure that he passes. If it were up to me, I would love it if you could at least just pass, right? An outright pass or something. Or at least pass with minor corrections. but we're trying to avoid a resubmit or a fail. All right. People in the audience, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Doc, and good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, hi, Ms. Violet, please proceed.
Yeah, I think, Doc, you've talked about most of the things which I also noted down. Yeah, maybe just to help our colleague Adrian, especially maybe on time management. I don't know whether it's possible maybe to reduce the number of slides, because like if you have so many slides and you want to discuss and talk about each and every slide in detail, I think that is going to take a lot of time. I was thinking maybe, since the time which is given is about 10 minutes, somewhere there, if it's possible maybe to restrict some slides to maybe just to have 13 maximum slides, so that in those 13, and the slides are not supposed to be crowded. Just you put the PowerPoints, just the points, and the most of the information is supposed to just be coming from you, so that you don't take a lot of time. Also, I wanted also to comment on the literature, the similar literature which was also shared. I think on that one also there's no need of talking about all the findings from those researchers that you are quoting from. It's better maybe you just you can group even the findings from the similar literatures, instead of talking about each and every researcher that you quoted. It's better you just I think you can group the findings of those researchers and just talk about two or one, just for the sake of time. Also, I think there's no need of reading everything on the slides, because that will take a lot of time. And I was just wondering whether it is that is the format where all the subheadings of the dissertation is supposed to be included in a PowerPoint slide. So I was thinking that
Sorry, I've
maybe
missed you there. Subheadings?
the subheadings of the dissertation, is it supposed to be part? Is it supposed to be as a slide on its own, or some of the subheadings, and you are not supposed to even include them as a slide, because I think that will also take your time. For example, as Doc mentioned on the outline, since the outline is there in the dissertation, I don't think there's no need of talking about it. I think you just start by, you just introduce your topic, what it is all about, what you are investigating. Then you go to the problem and the objectives. You just talk about that. Then you go to the findings. So the slides, I think you just pick the most important areas and you concentrate on talking just about those areas. Because like if you include everything in the dissertation, I think that will take a lot of your time. I think that is what I observed. For the questions about the dissertation itself, I don't have any questions. Maybe just on the voice projection also, I think it's supposed to be clear, as Doc also mentioned. Sometimes when you are talking, you are too fast, but I think you need to take your time so that people can be able to understand. I think those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot. So on the voice projection, I wanted to make a suggestion, right? If you notice, the audio coming from Violet is quite clear. So I don't know what device you're using. If you can tweak it and test it and make sure that the sound coming from your end is clear, that would be good. I don't know about the pace here. It may affect your time, right? You're naturally fast here, so if you reduce your pace, you have to rehearse that change, just take note so that, because again, you'll be faced with the same challenge of going beyond the 10 minutes. I would suggest that you keep the outline, because sometimes the outline gives people an idea of the structure of the dissertation, and it's actually customary to include it. So maybe what you might want to do is just not spend a lot of time. Just 5 seconds is enough here. My name is Adrian on the title slide, and I was supervised by Lighton. The title of my dissertation is yada yada yada. This is the outline of my presentation, and then you zero in into the introduction. All right. I've always thought that there are a number of rules of thumb in terms of presentations, right? Sometimes they'll say if you're presenting in 20 minutes, you shouldn't have more than 20 slides or something. I don't know. I mean, in some circles that is the prescription, but in some instances, like in my case, the way I designed my slides is that they're designed in such a way that there's a bit of animation. They're static slides, but there are animations, implied animations in there. So I could have, 20 slides, but I have 10 minutes to do my presentation, and I'll be able to actually pack everything within the 10 minutes, because it turns out that in some instances, I will not be spending a lot of time there. And this is where I think what Violet mentioned becomes handy, right? You use less text because people in the audience would want to read what's on the slide. If you have a lot of text, they want to read everything. So rather than a lot of text, maybe if possible, you include more of figures or tables or something. If you're going to decide to remove slides, if you decide to follow through with the prescribed rule of thumb, where if you have 10 minutes, then don't have more than 10 slides or whatever. I hope this won't disrupt. It won't disrupt you, because sometimes the slides or the contents in the slides act as cues, right? They remind you of what it is you want to talk about or you need to talk about. I don't know. Are there any other thoughts or questions about this? Okay. Please.
I just have a correction.
Yes.
For Adrian. He's put ZCAS University as Zambia Accountancy, Chartered Accountancy Studies. It's just ZCAS, one word.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Let's change this quickly and take note of this. If you are making the same mistake in the dissertation, when you get back feedback, you have an opportunity to make changes to your dissertation. This must be changed. Remember, everything is going to be publicly available, right? Now, the people that are going to be going through your dissertation won't just look at your name here. They'll be looking at, but who supervised this person here? And, it's embarrassing sometimes, but how did they miss out these things here? All right. Okay. So maybe we can proceed to.
No, Adrian, it's ZCAS.
Sorry?
ZCAS. There's no I.
Thank you very much.
Oh, ZC? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is the power of doing these things as a group, right? And by the way, I think I sent out an email earlier. We didn't do a lot of this last year, but we are resuming this year. So we're going to have a lot more talks from students, so that the senior students will give us an update on what they've done, and the new students will give us will do rehearsal presentations of their work. It's unfortunate that some people are not attending this session, which is quite sad. But anyway, Matilda, I think you are next. We're going to ask Adrian to unshare, and then Matilda can start her presentation. As soon as you are ready, you must let us know so that we time you as well. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Phiri. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is on my end. I don't know about the others.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm ready to start.
Okay, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Matildah Muchinga, being supervised by Dr. Lighton Phiri, and my research topic is identifying effective approaches for improving the uptake of instructional repositories content in the higher education institutions in Zambia. The following is the order of presentation that I'm going to follow. Background of the study. So higher education institutions are essential for academic research in Zambia. However, despite the active research conducted by students and academic staff members within these higher education institutions, the resulting output faces challenges in terms of visibility and uptake. So there are 11 higher education institutions in Zambia with functional institutional repositories. Additionally, the annual trend and uptake in the IRRs are very low as compared to the publications that are indexed on Google Scholar profiles for the academic members of staff in these higher education institutions. Statement of the problem. So Zambia has seen a steady increase in the number of higher education institutions. There are a total of 64 registered higher education institutions, out of which 13 are public and 51 are private. While there has been an increase in the number of registered higher education institutions and corresponding enrollment rates of postgraduate students, the online visibility of scholar research output is still noticeably low in Zambia. That's according to Phiri 2018. So a common challenge encountered in these higher education institutions is the significant gap between the research that is conducted by researchers and the representation of this work in the institutional repositories. For instance, the University of Zambia is one of the higher education institutions. It has set up an IR, which is used for archiving faculty staff, authored preprints, and postprints. However, while UNZA has had a functional IR for a considerable number of years and conducted a lot of research, the content that is deposited in the IR does not reflect with its staff complement. It's in the light of this gap that this study aims to identify effective approaches for improving the uptake of IR content in higher education institutions in Zambia. The following are the objectives of this study. The main objective of this study was to identify effective approaches for improving the uptake of IR content in higher education institutions in Zambia. And the following were the specific objectives. One, to determine the uptake of scholar resource output in IRs, to identify effective techniques for depositing LIGAS content, and to determine techniques that will ensure that the effective use of self-archiving approaches. The following were the research questions. What is the uptake of scholar resource output in IRs? What effective techniques can be employed for depositing LIGAS content in the IRs? What techniques can be used to ensure effective self-archiving among academic members of staff and researchers? The significance of the study. It is anticipated that the findings of the study may contribute to the following. That's empirical evidence showing the low IR content in the higher education institutions. It will equally identify the effective approaches and techniques that will ensure the effective use of self-archiving. And in the same vein, once the uptake of IR content is increased, the online visibility of scholar research output in the higher education institutions will increase and the IRs will reflect their staff complement. The following is a theoretical framework that was used in this study. That's a diffusion of innovation theory. This is simply a theory that explains how new ideas, products, and behaviors spread through a specific population or social system over time. And this theory was applied in this study, could be applied in this study to understand the factors influencing the adoption of depositing research output into IRs by academic staff, including the perceived benefits of the innovation, the communication channels through which awareness about IRs is spread. The following is part of the literature that was reviewed in this study. Research methodology. So for the first objective, the target population was the 11 higher education institutions that have functional institutional repositories. This is the University of Zambia, Lusaka Pex Medical University, Cavendish University, Chalimbana University, Copperbelt University, Kwame Nkrumah University, Mulungushi University, University of Lusaka, Zambia Center for Accounting Studies, Information and Communication University, and Texila American University. The sampling that was used for this objective, it was purposive sampling. This is because we needed to select academic members of staff or researchers that have Google Scholar profiles from these higher education institutions. So the researchers decided to use purposive sampling because the study focused on academic members of staff and researchers who have Google Scholar profiles. So the procedure, publish or perish software was used to extract author publications from Google Scholar. The Open Archives Initiative protocol was used to extract publications from institutional repositories. Then in terms of the institutional repository uptake, the uptake of the scholarly resource output in IRS for each sampled academic member of staff with a Google Scholar profile from each selected higher education institution was determined by comparing the number of publications archived to Google Scholar profiles against what each sampled academic member of staff or researcher has archived to the institutional repository. Okay. In terms of data analysis, the collected data was analyzed by creating a spreadsheet for each sampled academic member of staff. The second objective and the third objective methodology was combined because this was done using interviews. So the target population, the research targeted academic members of staff and researchers who publish in the higher education institutions. It also targeted assistant deans or persons who are in charge or responsible for compiling quarterly reports, and librarians who are charged with the responsibility of managing the institutional repository. The sample size was 20 assistant deans / persons responsible for research, 20 academic members of staff, and 10 librarians. The sampling technique that was used was the purposive sampling. Then simple random sampling was also used to select academic members of staff who had significant differences between what they uploaded on their Google Scholar against what was ingested in the institutional repository. The data collection instrument that was used was a semi-structured interview guide, and this data was analyzed thematically. In terms of limitations, the study was focused on IRs in higher education institutions. Therefore, the information collected in the study was exclusive to the selected number of institutions that were part of the study, and the recommendations were only to be generalized to higher education institutions that share similar settings and conditions to those of higher education institutions. In terms of the research findings and discussions, so table 1 shows academic staff complement versus Google Scholar profiles. So this side, it shows the institutions, the number of academic members of staff per each institution. For instance, UNZA, that's 800, and the number of Google Scholar profiles. Giving an example of UNZA, it's 661. Then out of the 11 higher education institutions, publications were extracted from 8 higher education institutions as shown in the table below. Publications were not extracted from 3 higher education institutions. This is Copperbelt, Kwame Nkrumah, and Texila American University because the institutional repositories were non-functional at the time. Table 2 shows publications, the number of publications in Google Scholar against the number of publications that are in the institutional repository and those that are missing from Google Scholar. Table 2 above provides a comprehensive overview of the total number of publications available on Google Scholar for each higher education institutions, along with the number of these publications present in their respective IRs. For instance, UNZA, 91% of the publications available, 99.5% are missing. ZCASC is 5%. Mulungushi University is 96%. Apex University is 74%. ICU University is 86%. Cavendish University 98%, and Chalimbana University 83%. In terms of the annual trend and uptake of Google Scholar and IR publications for each institution, The annual trend and uptake of IRs in higher education institutions have shown fluctuating patterns over the years. For instance, the IR uptake exhibited a fluctuating trend, starting at 4% in 2010, increasing to 88% in 2013, and then gradually decreasing to 6% in 2023. Similarly, ZCAS experienced a fluctuating trend with IR uptake, increasing from 40% in 2014 to 67% in 2016, then decreasing to 18% in 2019, and decreasing again to 50% in 2022. The study also reviewed that IR uptake rates are generally low, with fluctuating trends over the years. For instance, the average IR uptake rate is very low, that's 11%. ZCAS is at 37%. UNILAS at 0.8%, Cavendish University at 6%, ICU University 20%, Chalimbana University at 7%, Mlungushu University at 4%, and Lusaka Metro University at 28%, respectively. Findings for objective number 2, that's strategies for uploading legacy content. The research findings on the missing publications in IRs revealed that many academic staff and researchers had more publications on their Google Scholar profiles than what they had been uploaded to their institutional repository. So the findings demonstrated the necessity of educating academic staff members about the IRs, linking the IR to Google Scholar, and integrating it with the academic promotion tool as part of the strategies for uploading content. The study found that 26% of academic staff members were not aware of the IR and their responsibility to submit publications to it. However, 21% of the respondents who were previously unaware expressed their intention to submit their missing publications to the repository. The study also found that 100% of the academic staff respondents had their missing publications readily available and were willing to contact the librarian to share their publications to be archived on the IRs. The research findings highlight several strategies to ensure that all content that is missing from the IR is uploaded. These include training and support, automation of the deposit process, incentives for publishing, clear deposit policies and guidelines, marketing and awareness campaigns in collaboration. The study's findings on the easiest way for academic members of staff to submit missing content to the library reviewed that academic staff and researchers should provide metadata in advance. The findings and discussion for the last objective, that's self-archiving strategies. The study found that 58% of librarians had conducted deliberate training to teach academic staff on how to use the IR to upload their publications, while the remaining 2% had not conducted such training. The study further reviewed that the training approaches varied, including departmental sessions, in-house training, orientation activities, and personalized training based on the requests as their needs arose. The study found that 79% of the respondents didn't know about either the IRs or problems that come with self-archiving, while the other 21% said it was hard to find time for self-archiving because they were busy and that the process took too long and the submission guidelines were not clear. The study found that the strategies for motivating academic members of staff and researchers to self-archive include offering training, implementing IR policies that mandate academic members of staff to submit their publications, providing publishing incentives for members of staff who publish, linking the IR to the promotion system, simplifying the submitting procedures, and appreciating academic members of staff who publish through the IR and streamlining the self-archiving process. In conclusion, the research findings on the IR publication, uptake, status in higher education institutions in Zambia reveal several important insights. The presence of academic staff members and researchers with Google Scholar profiles from the 11 higher education institutions in Zambia indicates that the research footprint and online visibility of scholarly output in Zambian higher education institutions. The presence of academic members of staff with Google Scholar profiles suggests the potential for the availability of research output that can be deposited into IRs, contributing to the increased online visibility of scholarly research output in Zambia. Recommendations: higher education institutions should see to it that their IRs activate the This is because at the time of data extraction from the IRs, only the UNZA IR had the Open Archives Initiative protocol activated among all the higher education institutions. The higher education institutions should embrace the highlighted strategies in the study to ensure that the missing publications are captured and ingested in the IRs. Based on the research findings, it is recommended that higher education institutions in Zambia offer training and support to academic members of staff on the IR, highlighting the benefit and importance of depositing their publications in the IR. It is also recommended that the higher education institutions consider automation of the deposit process by integrating the IRs with other systems such as publication databases and information management systems. The study is also recommending that the higher education institutions implement the IR policies, which will guide the academic members of staff and mandate them to submit their publications to the IR. The library should collaborate and partner with departmental administrators and editors to streamline the upload processes for departmental journals and internal databases with IRs. Thank you. This is the end of the presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Matildah. Right? This was great. Now, I just wanted to mention that I think part of the reason why I probably don't have a lot of comments to say about your work is because amongst the others, right, your memory is still fresh. We were only wrapping up, I think you're doing quite a bit of analysis just a few weeks ago, a few months ago or something. So I think your presentation is on point here because you still remember a lot of what you did. I'm just worried here, right, because you see, you took 16 minutes and 12 seconds. That's a lot of time there. And the things that I've noticed about your presentation style is you're quite verbose, right? You want to talk about everything that you did. That's not really a point of the viva voce, really.
Okay.
You want to focus on the more, I don't want to say the more important things really, but the things that you think, because remember, the things that you think the examiners are going to be interested in, because you must understand that in as much as this is a public defense, the general public is invited, by the way, so if you have a significant other or relatives that you'd want to attend this, send them a link, right? It's a public defense. But in as much as it's a public defense, you are presenting this to the three examiners. By the way, I'm surprised that they divulged the names of the examiners, but that's okay. Well, I think it's okay. You normally ask, right? The supervisors. At least this was the practice at my alma mater. But so 16 minutes is just too much here, right?
Yes.
Especially that you have 10 minutes. You know, so my thinking here is I think that when it comes to the results, you can do better. You can just focus on the important things. Like when you start talking about results to do with objective 2 and 3. You see, the key things to talk about here for the presentation, 10-minute long presentation, are things to do with what strategies did these people you're interacting with, what strategies did they highlight as being potentially effective? If you go to some of the very last slides, it's not necessary for you to say, if you go to one of the sample slides with the results from the objective 2 and 3, if you can click on one of them, go to the next one. Go to the next one. This is from objective number 1. I'm looking for objective 2 and 3.
Okay, this is for 2.
Go to the next one.
This is for 2.
Yes.
Uploading strategies to upload.
Yes, like for instance, right?
Okay.
If you go here, it's not necessary for you to start talking. A study found that 26% of the academic members staff were not aware of the IR. Because you see, in as much as the issues to do with awareness were important, you probed this, right? Because you're trying to use that information to help explain the results. This has nothing to do with the objective. The objective is looking at strategies, right? For improving the uptake.
Okay.
So for you to reduce on the time, try and identify things that, I'm not saying this is not important stuff. In the dissertation, the manuscript, it says, yes, this stuff is there and it must remain there. But we're talking about where exactly are you going to reclaim time? Because you don't have time, right? We're not talking about Adrian here who went up to, is it 12 minutes or something? This is 16 minutes we're talking about here. You know, so and the same applies to the uptake. So reclaim time by just focusing on the necessary things. When you're talking about uptake, you say uptake to do with self-archive, or uptake to do with legacy content, and uptake to do with self-archiving, right, or ingestion of current content or something. That's what you should be focusing on. You bring out the key themes that came out of these interviews, and you explain them somehow. It's not necessary for you to start talking about percentages and all those things. And then for this particular objective, the very first objective, very important objective, obviously, there's some really interesting stuff here that, and we should be talking about publishing here, by the way, because you're done with the dissertation. But the thing is, you're quite verbose, and the reason is simple, because you're presenting this information in text form. I'll give you an example of what you were doing in the last point, right? You're literally telling people to say, the study revealed that the uptake, the average uptake at UNZO was very low at 11%, at ZCAS it was 7%, at UNILAS 0.8%. By the way, why is UNILAS uptake? Oh, it was the lowest, so that's fine. So you see, the way to get around this is, if you have graphs, right, you'd have a bar plot here showcasing uptakes out of 100%. And then you focus, instead of telling people, you were telling people what they're able to read, right? What you should have done was, you have a bar plot, and then you just mention, say, we noticed that the uptake was highest at the University of Zambia, followed by LAMU, and the institution with the lowest uptake was UNILAS. Period. Done. Right? These other things. So you'd have a very nice bar plot, very clear bar plot, and Adrian will probably help you generate the bar plot if you want, but you have some of these things, I think, in your dissertation. Or Malaysia can give you ideas on how to do this, but I think you have these things in your dissertation already. That way you'll be able to cut down on time, right? Because, again, if you go to the next slide. Okay, these are strategies. Go to the previous slide, let's see. The previous one. Yeah, so again, when you're talking about these things, like you're talking about table 2 above, annual trends, and this is where you're going to have to reclaim time, to be honest. But we want to be careful not to compromise the quality of the presentation, because people are interested in the findings. You know, so bullet point number 2, for instance, unnecessary. Well, I mean, maybe just a bar plot, right? Instead of having that, because you'll be forced to read. It's necessary, but you. So okay, the reason I'm saying it may not be necessary, because what you're talking about here, when you're giving examples, say for instance, at UNZA, 90% of the publications available on Google Scholar are missing in the repository. You're saying 91%, right? If you go to the next slide, how different is that statement from this one, where the last statement? Okay. But by the way, what's the percentage there? It said 91.
That's 91.
Yeah, and people are going to, you'll be caught lacking here, as they say here, right, in hip hop circles, because if you're saying at UNZA 91 of the publications available on Google Scholar are missing on the IR, then what you're saying is that percentage that you have on the next slide should be the opposite of that, right? Minus 100. So if you add 91 to 11, it doesn't give you 100% here. There's a bit of issues here with the math. But you're explaining the same things because the uptake is defined as what? Maybe because this is an average, but the uptake is defined as the proportion of content that is on Google Scholar that is in the repository, is it?
Yes.
Yes. This is the same thing as what you have before. So it's unnecessary.
Okay.
You want to, this is where you're going to have to keep time. You've been quite verbose. If you go to the previous slide, 22. This is all from the previous slide. Again, you go to the other slide. Yeah, the table. Yeah, if you look at this, for instance, right? No, the one you are on.
Yes.
The next one?
This one?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's, for some of these things, it would be nice to have this data here, by the way, but I'll be the first one to tell you that the information that you have here is the one that is being used to derive the, okay, it's a overall institutional uptake is what you have here, whereas the average uptake here is based on individual faculty. And by the way, we want to be careful here. We want to understand what you're presenting because they will ask questions, right? So people that will be paying attention will be able to ask you, but wait a minute, why is it that you have 91% of publications that are not in the repository, but the uptake is at 11%? Should it not be that should be 13? No, not 13, sorry. Is it 9 or something?
9.
Yeah. Right, but you see the thing, Matilda, the argument here is you explain to them to say it's the way the computation was done. The average uptake was done at the researcher level. So you were computing the average uptake based on the researchers. That's why there's a bit of a discrepancy or something. That's what you want to do. Whereas the other one just looks at all the publications as a whole. So you give an example to say, for instance, for a person like Lighton, you look at his uptake, right, at UNS as a whole. For somebody like Professor Kandwa, you look at his uptake, and then you get the average of those uptakes, which is why there's a bit of a discrepancy. That would be your explanation. Whereas the other one just looks at absolute values. How many things are in the repository versus how many things are on Google Scholar. And the other thing to put into the other thing to mention is that if you come here, this is where the explanation is going to make a lot of logical sense. What you have here also includes the things, the dissertations, does it not? Or we excluded the dissertations here?
Yes.
We excluded them here?
Yes, I think we excluded them.
Okay, we want to confirm that. But yeah, so you want to confirm those things. They will ask. But if I were you, right, what you have here should be to be honest, this should be in a bar plot.
Okay, I have bar plots, but I had one bar plot for each institution.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of
Adrian would probably help you with coming up with nice bar plot, or Malaysia. They are both, I think, available. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you analyze your data. You can merge these things, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Or are you saying go back to where you were?
Okay, just a minute. So I was saying I have these bar plots for each institution.
Yeah, but that line plot is you can merge them though. That's a line plot though. But okay. If you go back to your presentation.
Okay.
You see, I think your concern is that you have 8 institutions here. You can use what's called a stacked bar plot, where each bar plot shows you the proportion of what is in Google Scholar versus what is in the repository. That's it. So you'd have just 8 bars. Alternatively, you can, because I think your worry is you don't want to have 16 bars, but you can have 8 bars that will show you, they will show you stacked. I wonder if stacked bar plot. They'll merge, not, that's a side by side plot, but what a stacked bar plot does is the red and the blue will be merged into one, and then it just shows you the proportion of which one is greater. Because it turns out that what people are interested in seeing is just, because you're comparing what is in the repository versus what is not in the repository. So if you merge them, it will show you the proportions. But yeah, I mean, you can leave the table if the table is helpful. There's only tomorrow. Don't stress with this. There's no time to start experimenting with things that are going to be difficult. So if you still want to maintain the table, that's fine. That's fine as well. And then the other.
Okay.
Sorry.
So would this table be okay? This is the table that is showing.
No, but that's a side.
Like for instance,
this is again the side by side plot here. I mean, you can use this as well. You can put it there. That's fine. This is fine. You can put it there.
So it means I replace the table with this.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want the table, you can put. But you see, people will have. It's about when you're presenting this information, you are trying as much as possible to prevent people from reading. People will be tempted to want to look at those numbers, right? But if you have a bar plot, it becomes easier for me to compare numbers. I mean, these are like, there's a stark contrast between what is in the IR and what is not in the IR. But when you start looking at LAMU, for instance, it may be a bit challenging here. So it's better to just use a bar plot, a visualization, like a chart or a plot or a graph. Is better. I wanted to mention something here, right? By the way, the same for the annual trend, you can have just a sample of an institution. If you can't merge everything into one, say, this graph just showcases the annual trend for one of the 8 institutions. This is from the University of Zambia. You can see that the annual trend doesn't show any significant, there isn't any significant trend when you compare the results year by year or something. You know, I mean, so yeah. Listen, I wanted to mention something here. If you go to your recommendations, you want to be very careful here, right? I don't know how we miss this out. You see, when we're talking about recommendations here, we must always link recommendations, if we can go to the slide with recommendations, to the things that we did. Right? So if we look at recommendation number 1, for instance.
Okay.
How is this related to your objective? The only reason you're putting this there is because it was painful for you to extract the data. But it has nothing to do with uptake. Right? So why we put it? It's a nice recommendation, but you see, when we're talking about recommendations are supposed to be relative to the research objectives. Very, very important.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I'd mention that. I don't know if they're going to pick it up, but maybe they may, or maybe they may not. On the limitations, I don't know if you included this, but we want to mention, Matildah, that there's that very important detail where the way we were searching for members of staff from each institution was we were searching for the institution on Google Scholar. Like for UNZA, I would search University of Zambia, and then we look at profiles, is it? Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes, that's a limitation because people without Google Scholar profiles were left out. So that should be stated as a recommendation. And by the way, if you were to present this to UNZA people, they'll tell you, no, why was I left out? I did something recently. Why was I left out? Because there are some people who perhaps do their postdoc or they do their PhDs at some fancy university like Oxford. In Google Scholar, I want to maintain Oxford as your affiliation. I mean, to each their own here, right? So like in my case, just because I went to school at the University of Cape Town, I'll maintain the University of Cape Town because my profile stands out much better than, I'm just speculating here. So you leave out those people because you are only searching for people who have specified that their affiliation is UNZA. The other limitation is that people that have retired or people that have since left UNZA were actually picked out as UNZA staff. In fact, even you yourself, if you've tagged UNZA as your affiliation right now, you probably picked yourself, I think, I don't know. but so students as well. So that's a limitation, but that's okay because ultimately you are comparing these with the things in the repository. Now I wanted to do something different here, right? Because by the way, I wanted to also mention under the theory that was used, diffusion of innovation theory. You see, your explanation for why you used, what was your explanation for why you used the theory, by the way? Do you want to explain to us why?
I just said how it's being applied to the study. So one of the reasons I think, because this theory is talking about, it involves an innovation that is communicated through certain channels over time among members of the social system. So one of the reasons why we used it is because it assumes that over time, when you install an institutional repository, over time it should have more and more users.
Excellent. But that's not what you said in your presentation. I'll share the recording. That is what you should say. You're trying to track.
Okay.
Yes, that is what you should say. Thank you. They will ask, I'm sure. Now, here's the thing, right? Why is this even important? Why should I care as Lighton? Right? Why should I even care that some of my things are not on the repository when my publications are there on Google Scholar, all of them. They're there on academia.edu. I have a ResearchGate profile. They're there. They're on Semantic Scholar. They're all over, right? Why is this important?
Yes.
Why should we bother about your research? I'm playing devil's
It's
advocate
important.
here. They may ask you this question, yeah?
Okay, so it's important that academic members of staff, in as much as they have their publications archived on Google Scholar profiles, that research should also be archived on their institutional repository, because that helps with the institutional ranking. It will be when, for instance, for Dr. Archive, he has his publications on Google Scholar profiles, and he also has his publications on the IR. It improves the research visibility for UNZA and for him as an individual. I think so.
Beautiful. I couldn't have said it any better. It's to do with the profiling of the institutions. And in
Okay.
fact, you can even, if somebody does ask, you can even sneak in the part where of late we've seen an obsession with rankings, right? At some point, UNZA was reported to have ranked number 6 by Times Higher Education or something, So the thing here is about, it's not about the individual, but about the profile of the institution as a whole. And turns out that content that is archived on an institution's domain is sometimes what would be used, right?
Yes.
During ranking. You see, the other thing I wanted to mention is, I don't know if you're thinking about this, but if you ever think about PhD or something going out there are a number of people that are interested in this space, right? Although gradually, what people are more interested in are what are called alternative metrics or OT metrics. So instead of looking at citation counts and just publication counts, what people are looking for now is the impact of research relative to, let's say, how many people are mentioning the publication done by Adrian on Twitter, on Facebook. How many journalists have actually written about that publication? So this thing here has become quite important. And last week, we spent almost all of last week in Southern Province workshop we're doing for UNZA, compiling the research reports for 2020, 2021, and 2022. The things we're doing, most of the things you were doing are the things we're doing there. So the skills that you've acquired really in this space, maybe LAM may not really appreciate what it is you're doing, but the larger organizations that are seriously thinking about this, like UNILAS and I hope ZCAS and UNZA and CBU, for instance, definitely obsessing a lot about this. It's not easy to compile these metrics. And then, you see, I wanted to just ask, this thing doesn't have pages, does it? I couldn't see the pages because the overlay was obscuring in the center. Do you have pages here?
No, I don't have.
That's not nice. Put pages there because people will not take us seriously. I'm going to invite people to maybe ask questions.
Okay, maybe before you move on, Dr. Phiri, I wanted to ask about the methodology. Is it okay the way it has been stated?
Yes. The methodology is fine. If you go to your methodology, I think it's you were wait a minute. You broke it up, right? You separated them, or did I miss this out? Yes, you separated them. This is perfect. This is fine. This is exactly what we're talking about here. You did the opposite of what Adrian did, which is a good thing. This is excellent. You're mentioning, by the way, this is the other part where you are being verbose, right? You can.
Yes.
Yeah, you can. But this is perfect.
I wanted to find out which parts I can reduce on the methodology.
Yeah, well, the methodology here. It's just the amount of time you're talking about these things. So instead of saying in cases where OIPMH was not activated, Octopus, why don't you just say in order to extract publications from IRs, the OIPMH protocol was used alongside Octopus in instances where the OIPMH was not activated. Done. Publish or perish was used to extract publications from Google Scholar. Done. But
should I include this? Should I include the institutional report for the uptake?
No, that's important because you want to, that's the important part of the methodology, because what you're explaining to people is to say the way we were computing the uptake is we were essentially interested in comparing what is in Google Scholar versus what is in the IR, and the uptake is defined as follows. Maybe you can reduce the sentence and just say the uptake was computed by comparing what was in Google Scholar against what was in the repository. I think there was a thought from our colleague. Is that Malais or something?
Yes, it was. I do have a bit of a spot where maybe she can. If
please, this is what we want. Go ahead,
yes.
shoot.
In the beginning, in the methodology, you in slide 1 at the end there you repeat mentioning the type of selection, and then you do it again on slide 4. And if you find that you can take that out. You read that I think 3 times. Sampling, yeah, purposive sampling. If you check, you find it in the next line again and on the 4th methodology slide again. I think that's something.
Where does it appear again? Go down.
Yeah, if you keep going, I believe the 4 in the middle. Wait, if you go up there. Here again, where you say where the Google Scholar profiles there, the one you just from. There again at the top, you repeat what you said there. I think there's a bit of a lag, but yeah, if you see there at the top, where there's a part where you're talking about the data collected. One of the pages next to this one, I think it should be above, not this page. I think down below. But anyway, you had come over it just now again. Here at the top, target population.
Okay.
Yeah, the Google Scholar there again. You see, right? Yeah, you mentioned the same sampling technique again.
Oh, so I think the reason she's doing this, I could be wrong, but the reason she's doing this is because she has so there are distinct studies essentially. This study is linked to the interaction with assistant deans, is it, Matilda?
Yes, so this particular one is for respect to objective 2 and 3.
3, yeah.
2 and 3.
And then the other one is for objective 1. So it's the
The
same.
other one was for objective 1.
It's the same technique, and it has to be mentioned that it's the same technique, but these are like 2 separate studies.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I understand. And if we can go, this part is for me to understand something. If we can go to the beginning, in the introduction, right in the introduction, there's a part where you mentioned within the introduction the number of institutions, and then you mentioned later, and it was a bit of a different number here. There are 11 HE else, 6 public and 5 private, and then a bit later I think you mentioned that there are 13 or something like that. If you can,
Okay.
yes, I don't know if
So
it's
for
just
the
me,
first,
maybe I don't understand. So,
okay, I've seen it. So for the first part, the 11, we're just talking about those that have functional institutional repositories. Then this 13, this is in a study which is saying that we have 64. So this is the total number of registered, at the time of data collection, registered higher education institutions. Out of these, 13 were public and 51 were private. But these are the 11 that have functional
no,
institutional repositories.
okay, okay. Thank you so much for that clarity. I'm a bit of a slow reader, but thank you.
No,
No,
it's
no,
fine. And part of
thank
the
you so
reason why
much for the
we normally
correction.
encourage, especially the newer students to attend this is because there's quite a bit to learn, right? Just from these presentations, you notice that you will definitely go away with new knowledge. And for me, for somebody like me, it's a way of not repeating the same things, right? Because if you don't attend this, I'll have the same conversation that I had with Matildah, with Dokowe, with Robert, over and over again. It's like we are Sisyphus now. It's almost like we're in hell, right? Being punished for whatever it is we did. But I don't know if there are any other thoughts from colleagues.
Just a correction again. It's
Yes.
ZICAS U abbreviation. Not ZICAS is the
Okay,
college.
okay.
Thank you very much. Sometimes when people have, like in these exams, right? If you're working on something that is not, because most of the students I work on topics that are not normally. I mean, this is list centric. This is information science for most of you guys, except Dokowe is classic human-computer interaction, right? Although the application is within library and information science, but sometimes when you discuss things and they go way above people's heads, they'll start saying, no, why are you putting that when it's supposed to be something else? So you want to be very careful that you show people that in the 2 years that you've been doing this, you understand what you are doing. I think she said it's not ZICAS. You said ZICAS University. Is ZU, right? It's Dokowe.
ZICAS University. So for abbreviation, it can be ZICAS U,
Okay.
not just ZICAS on its own.
Yeah.
Zika. Okay. Then, so how should you treat this? The center still. Okay, just read it for
No,
me. How it should be.
so it's just so you can wrap off that Zambia Center for Accountancy Studies. That's the college. They don't have an IR.
Okay, so if I'm writing it in full ZICAS, how should I write it?
It's ZICAS University. ZICAS is the word on its own.
So Zambia
No. It's
Just
become just
Accountancy
ZICAS
University.
University. That's what they call it. It's a registered.
Oh, it's just ZICAS University.
Yes. So the
Yes.
abbreviation is ZICAS U.
Okay.
So Zambia Center for Accountancy Studies is a different institution.
Okay, so if I want to write ZICAS in full, I just write ZICAS, then university.
Yes. So
Yes.
I think what she's
Is
saying,
it?
instead of Zambia for Accountant Studies, just replace that with ZICAS space University. I think that's what she's saying.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no additional thoughts, maybe we can move on to. Thank you very much. Thing you want to rehearse this, by the way. Please rehearse. Now, when I was a student myself, I must say this: there was no one to rehearse this with. I present this with my colleagues in the lab, and then if there are suggested changes, like we've provided changes, I go back, make changes, and then I'll do takes. I record myself maybe on my phone. I do a presentation, and then I check the time. I play it back to make sure that I'm talking about the correct things, because you only have tomorrow. It's today and tomorrow. There's no time for us to have another rehearsal, like with all of us present. It's on you. You can maybe try and see if you can convince your other colleagues to help with a different rehearsal, but make sure that you make the changes and then you have another rehearsal so that you don't go beyond the 10 minutes. They will stop you. and it would be sad.
Okay.
It's painful, right? Where you are unable to tell people what you did in the last 2 years or 3 years. It's sad.
Okay.
I mean, you may pass, but it's just not nice.
Okay.
Okay.
So, is it important for us to include the literature review? Is it okay if we omit it?
Or include it because, again, somebody will ask, what kind of research is this are you presenting where there's no literature review? But like we said, maybe just have a table of the summary. Just say, this is a summary of the literature, the key points are blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Instead of wasting time, I don't know if it's 1 minute or 2 minutes, you just spend maybe just 30 seconds or something, or 20 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So maybe you can unshare and then we'll have Cecilia just present. People, please don't go away. We still need you, your input. We have just 2 more speakers. We should be done by 16:40, I think, or 16:30.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Cecilia Christabel Kasonde. My supervisor is Dr. Lighton, Phiri. My study topic is strategies for enhancing metadata quality in electronic thesis and dissertations within institutional repositories. My outline of the presentation shall be as follows. Background: HEI has evolved from traditional libraries to embrace institutional repositories for archiving and sharing scholarly research, especially ETDs. The quality of metadata in ETDs is crucial for downstream services like the national ETD portals and global platforms affecting its discoverability. Literature points to comprehensiveness and accuracy as crucial issues in metadata quality, highlighting a gap in empirical research and practical interventions. Information professionals are transitioning from the traditional way of librarianship to digital repositories to meet modern information needs. IRs are modern constraints that capture, digitize, and disseminate institutional research output, facilitating accessibility to a wider audience. The study investigates the importance of metadata quality, aiming to address its evolution and contemporary relevance in digital information management. 7 criteria have been used to evaluate metadata quality, including completeness, accuracy, and accessibility, with a balance between manual and automated evaluation methods. This study is going to use the completeness method to evaluate the quality of metadata in institutional repositories. Despite the recognized importance of metadata quality in literature, there is a lack of focused research on the issues and improvement mechanisms within Zambian higher education institutional repositories, citing a research opportunity. Problem statement: metadata quality is essential for locating and identifying resources within digital repositories. ETDs are key scholarly outputs in HEI's archives. Their metadata quality affects their utility and accessibility. Tani also observed that metadata is a key element in the digital library domain. The Zambia National ETD portal exemplifies the need for improved metadata ingestion in higher education institutions. Literature indicates issues with metadata comprehensiveness and accuracy. The study seeks to pinpoint specific ETD metadata quality challenges with higher education institutional repositories, proposing strategies to enhance the ingestion of high-quality ETD metadata, and further address the critical question of overcoming metadata quality issues in higher education institutional repositories. The main objective for the study was to identify, to analyze, and propose mechanisms for improving metadata quality in ETDs within higher education institutional repositories, with specific objectives being to determine higher education institutions with functional IRs, evaluate the completeness of ETD metadata in Zambian higher education institutions, and to understand the metadata ingestion workflow and the policy impact. These were the research questions that mirror my objectives. The significance of the study. The research findings may provide an empirical basis for universities and other stakeholders to appreciate the value of quality metadata. It may also lead to relevant recommendations and suggestions for universities to enable the ingestion of quality metadata. The study was anchored on the data quality framework as proposed by Wang and Strong, which outlines the dimensions of data quality, including accuracy, completeness, and consistency. The researcher picked this framework because it provides a structured approach to evaluate the quality of metadata in ETDs within institutional repositories, which is the center of this research. Related literature. These were some of the studies that were consulted in the course of the study. Notable findings from these studies include the identification of significant problems with metadata elements, and also the discussion for various approaches and technologies developed to address metadata quality issues. Methodology. For the first objective, the target population was all registered higher education institutions under the Higher Education Institution Authority. The sampling technique was comprehensive survey that was conducted in order to ascertain which institutions had functional IRs and which ones did not. The instrument we used was an online questionnaire, and this was analyzed by categorizing the institutions that have IRs and those that don't have, those that have functional IRs and those that do not have. The second objective target population was higher education institutions with functional IRs. The sampling technique was purposive sampling. The instrument used was metadata harvesting using the OAI PMH tool. The analysis involved developing a completeness matrix. The researcher developed a completeness matrix based on the NDLTD ETDMS, a widely recognized standard for ETD metadata. So this involved allocating weight to metadata elements. The mandatory elements were given a weight of 1, while the optional elements were given a weight of 0.5. For the third objective, the target population was assistant librarians who are in technical services and involved in the ingestion process. The sampling technique was convenience sampling, and online semi-structured interviews were used. The analysis involved was thematic analysis and also using the NVivo software to transcribe the recordings from the interviews. For the last objective, the target population was chief librarians and individuals involved in policy drafting at higher education institutions with functional IRs. The sampling technique was convenient sampling. The instrument was online semi-structured interviews, and then analysis was thematic and NVivo software to transcribe the audio. Limitation of the study. The scope of analysis. The scope of analysis, as in the limitation in the number of IRs, may not fully represent the diversity and practices in the other institutions. Also, potential bias as selective focus on a few IRs could introduce bias, limiting the broader relevance. Data reliability. The study relied on self-reported information provided by the IR librarians. which may be prone to inaccuracies or inconsistencies. Also, temporal limitations. The study captured the state of IRRs at a specific time when the study was conducted. This may account for changes or developments that accrue after the study period. Results and discussions. For the first objective, 8 out of the surveyed higher education institutions have functional IRRs. The findings include the findings suggest an increase in a trend in digital repositories adoption, but indicates still room for growth. From the 23 unique responses, the study reviewed that only 8 had functional IRRs. This suggests the need for further investment and policy development to support IRR implementation in higher education institutions. For the second objective, the average completeness score of metadata was 4.82 out of the maximum score of 10. The scores indicate a disparity in metadata completeness across higher education institutions with a need for standardization. The implications of the study highlights the importance of establishing and adhering to metadata standards for improving ETD accessibility. For the third for the objective of understanding the metadata ingestion workflow, common challenges included inconsistent metadata standards and a lack of training among the metadata ingesters. The finding underscores inefficiencies in current workflows and the need for structured processes. The study further points to the potential benefits of developing comprehensive training programs and standardized workflows. On the impact of institutional repositories, the study findings indicate that policies varied widely between institutions, affecting metadata quality. The absence of structured formal policies in these institutions is a hindrance to data quality. The study indicates that only 2 out of the 8 institutions have institutional repository policies. Policies are a crucial role in metadata management, but lack of uniformity can lead to varied quality. The study implication indicates that there's a need to emphasize the need for policy harmonization and enforcement to improve metadata quality. Conclusion. The study identified functional IRRs across HEIs, showcasing a wide range of operational capabilities and services. The study provides a foundation for further metadata quality analysis. The study also evaluated metadata quality in functional IRRs, reviewing significant differences in metadata completeness and emphasizing the need for robust management practices. The study also analyzed the metadata ingestion processes, highlighting its complexity and the crucial role of trained personnel in ensuring effective metadata quality management. Lastly, the study established a clear link between IRR policies and metadata quality, underscoring the importance of comprehensive policy development for enhancing IRR effectiveness. Recommendations. The study recommends prioritizing content-specific metadata. It also recommends selecting appropriate metadata schemes, integrating metadata schemes with policies, and lastly, allocating resources and developing policies. These were some of the literature that were consulted in the course of the study. I acknowledge the following: Dr. Lighton, Phiri, my supervisor, the chief librarian, University of Zambia library staff, and all institutions of higher learning who are my study participants, and my family. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to mention something, right? I don't know if I've mentioned this before in the past, but the importance of attending these sort of events, especially for the new students. What you'd have noticed is that all of the presenters here have different presentation styles, and there's always something to pick out from the presentations. That something could be maybe the way somebody presents, right? their style in terms of designing slides. This is how we improve. This is how I have improved myself over the years since I began my journey of becoming a researcher back in 2011, right? Attending this sort of events, and there's usually plenty of events within UNZA as well, right? Exams are taking place in so many different schools as we speak. They're still going to take place, by the way. If you're still at UNZA this year and next year, be on the lookout, right? There are events that will take place in so many different schools. This is how you learn. This is what sets you apart from undergraduate students. I want to start off by just mentioning that it took you about 12 minutes and 12 minutes 20 seconds and 27 milliseconds, and I was worried there because at the very beginning I think you took quite a bit of time just on I think it was the background. Took you almost 3 minutes, right? And I think this is a section of your presentation, Cecilia, where you probably need to reclaim time because you've gone over by 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I want to start off with that. Wonderful presentation, by the way. But I have a bit of an issue here. I like, by the way, your workaround for presenting the methodology, right? Using the tabular format. I don't know how I feel about you using that in the results and discussion. And if you can go to the results and discussion, because it turns out that that's probably one of the most important aspects of what you're doing is the presentation of the results, right? You see, there's, it's too late now, I suppose, but the way that people examine you, the game is rigged, ladies and gentlemen, or colleagues. It's all in the DRGS guideline. The DRGS guideline tells you exactly how the examiners are going to be grading this. And part of what they've been told to look out for when they're marking your script, your manuscript, when they're marking your viva voce, your oral exam, is how you are presenting the findings, analyzing those findings, discussing them. If you go back to your presentation and you go to the results where you have that table, the first question I have for you is, when you're saying you're evaluating the completeness of ETD metadata in Zambia and HEIs, what average is that 4.24, right? How many of because you're saying 8 of the surveyed institutions are functional IRs. So where is that average coming from? Which institution is it linked to? Is a question. Because unless if you're telling us that average is for all the 8 institutions, which again would highlight a fundamental flaw in how you're analyzing this information. Does that make sense? I don't know if I can't hear you. I don't know if you have a response to that. Where is that 4.82 coming from?
Yes, Doc. The 4.82 is the average for all the institutions.
But we don't do that. We can't do that.
Okay.
And I'll be shocked here, and I'll say maybe we rushed through the back and forth we had if I didn't comment this. It doesn't make sense for you to start combining the average score for all the institutions because the practices are different. We know this from if you look at the things that the three of you have been doing are somewhat connected, right? What Adrian was doing, to a certain extent, what Matildah was doing. And we see that the practices are different when you compare UNZA and UNILAS. So why would you want to get an average score of 4.82? To what end, right? I don't know if I'm making sense here. Ideally, these results are supposed to be presented independent of each higher education institutions. Because the things that come out of here, the same applies, by the way, with the only objective that I think kind of like makes sense is the first objective, right? Because of the goal itself. The goal was just to determine which HEIs are functional repositories. And the findings are simple, right? And straightforward. You're going straight to the point here, straight to the jugular, and this is good. 8 of them have functional institutional repositories. In fact, if you want to get fancy, you can have a percentage, right? Or you can say 8 out of the 64. Or is it, I don't know how many HEIs were accredited with HEA at the time. 8 out of, so that people see, you see the importance of what we're doing. But the second objective, no. And I don't think that 4.2, I don't think we ever got to a stage where we're computing the average for all the institutions. That is wrong. We are going to misrepresent things here, because it turns out that part of what we want to do is to try and show people, to say these institutions are at different levels. Now, we don't know why they are at different levels, but objective number 3 and number 4 would in part help explain why they are at different levels. For instance, if they complete, which institution had the highest completeness score?
UNZA.
What was it?
It was 5.34.
Okay. And which one had the lowest score?
It was Apex.
And what was it?
4.29.
Okay. So
Oh, sorry, it was Zikas at 3.93.
Now, Dokowe here, I don't know, Zika's came out last, but I don't know what's happening here. But I guess the explanation is the thing here, right? And people may ask, but why is it that Zika's, right? Why are they last? And then maybe you have, and I hope these things came out of the interviews. I can't remember here. We've been doing a lot of things here with different students. But the reason could be that Zika's only recently launched their IR. They're still perfecting this. I know that it was recent because Abel, the current head of department, and myself at some point were invited by colleagues at Zika's, and we were interacting with them when we were initially planning to set up the repository, right? You see, your results must be explained somehow, and the best possible way of explaining your results in the case here is when you look at the completeness score, you could come up with explanations like, probably the reason why UNZA has a much higher completeness score, though not very good, than Zika's, for instance, is in part because UNZA is probably well resourced. And we see this because when we conducted interviews, we discovered that UNZA has X number of people working on this to do with ingestion. You're explaining the results, and this is what people expect you to do at this level of study, right? Not just broad descriptive statistics that we have here. I know that the dissertation probably has a lot more details, but we don't do that, right? The same applies for understanding ingestion workflows. You see, you want to be very careful because the people that are going to be examining you are people that are expert in this area, right? When you go in there and you start claiming that the common challenges are metadata standards and lack of training, maybe people from UNZA here will ask, and there are people that have experience working elsewhere, right? You see, Zambia is quite small, so people mingle here. You meet with colleagues, you exchange information. I say, lack of training at UNZA, are you sure? Maybe, maybe not, right? It turns out that these results, the long story short here is, the results, especially results for 2, 3, and 4, objective 2, 3, and 4, are best represented in isolation. Because you want to showcase other interesting things, like for objective number 2, the thing that we spoke for almost a year, the annual trend in the completeness scores. Because, you see, when you just get the aggregate value, it could be that the aggregate value is so small because once upon a time, this was something that was not being taken into account, but maybe things have changed. Whereas if the completeness score oscillates through the same values, like it's below 5, year in, year out, then we can conclude that for that particular institution, nothing has changed. The completeness score is still bad. Does that make sense? The point I'm trying to put across here really is the packaging of the results. You really need to work on this. And I know this has implications on the time here, but the problem with the way you've presented the part to do with the results especially is that it misrepresents a lot of things. And I'm sure some people may not pick up on this, but I especially picked out on objective number 2. So we want to look into that. The other thing that, because you must remember that the title says it all, right? And people will be asking here, but I thought your focus was on Zambian higher education institutions. Why is it that these results seem to be, they seem to be generalizing? You can't generalize results coming from ZCAS and from UNZA and from UNILAS and from Lungushi University. Practices are different. The staff complement is different. The levels, right, of progress made are different. UNZA has had this repository for more than a decade now. You know, so let's carefully think about this and repackage them properly. I was going to say here, right, that in some instances, especially at the very beginning, I took note of the fact that you were reading, right? The comment here was, please do not read the slides. Try as much as possible. There is such a thing as speaker notes, I think they are called or something, you know. And then in terms of reclaiming time here, you want to look at the background. I know this is presentation style, but and I like this is different. It makes sense, makes logical sense. What's important is there must be a logical flow of ideas, by the way. That is what is key, right? What you're talking about must make sense. But you see, you spoke for 12 minutes and 20 seconds, and then we are talking about you making radical changes to the results. So if you're looking at reclaiming time, the background, 3 minutes, 20 seconds is too much to talk about the background. Way, way too much. All right. I'm going to open up the floor here. I'm sure other people have more thoughts. You see, the other thing here is you have very few visualizations. You did some empirical studies, like for second objective and the first objective. People expect to see certain things here, right? Graphs, plots, charts, line plots, bar plots. By the way, this also goes to everybody else. When you're talking about research design, right? Please do this. None of you have done this. You must explicitly state overall, right? The study design itself. Our study was a quantitative study. We took a quantitative approach, or we took a mixed methods approach before you say anything else. So that it's a way of showing people that you know your stuff here. I'll open up. I know people are tired, 16:11, but well, one more presentation. But for now, any other thoughts for Cecilia's presentation?
Could you just go to that slide with the methodology table? Yeah, no, I just thought this was, as Dr. Phiri said, a very interesting way of doing it. I just wanted to, to have an idea of an image of that and how to do that. Anyway, thank you so much. That was all. I don't really have much to comment here.
So whilst you're on that, by the way, sorry to, I'm sure there's somebody else doing this, but what do we mean when we go back to the methodology? What do you mean by sampling? What sampling technique is comprehensive survey? Have we forgotten our 50-10? Now, Professor Kandura, if he wasn't ill here, would be very disappointed because he always attends these presentations, right? He would be disappointed because he would feel like he failed in teaching us. Is there something technique called comprehensive survey?
So it will simply just be a survey.
No, we're talking about sampling technique used. It's a census, right? When we sample the entire population, it's a census, is it? You see, for this might sound trivial here, but you must remember the goal of a master's program, right? You don't want to give people an opportunity to try and put you down in your presentation, right? To poke holes into what you did. They'll come here and say, you are acting like somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. Did you really do any research methods course? That's what I'll ask you. There's no sampling technique called comprehensive survey. There are specific types of sampling techniques. So that's called a census. All right. Are there any other thoughts? Please, also, just at the beginning or at the end, just mention to say there are 2 publications in your case that are based on this work. You want to show people, it's a way of you demonstrating that, not that you need to, I guess you need to prove, I suppose, but you want to demonstrate to people that this work, right, was so comprehensive enough that you've done much more than just produce a dissertation. It's very important that you do this. I know the manuscript has this information, but you want to put yourself out there. We have published work based on this dissertation at 2 different types of international venues. Done. Okay, if there are no questions, maybe we can unshare your screen. Thank you very much. Please, let's work on, and amongst the 4 of you, what you can do tomorrow is, once you make the changes, you can then find time and do these presentations as a group, right? So that you do another rehearsal if you think you have time. But if you won't have time, do these individually. I'm sure you have spouses or friends or sisters and brothers and whatnot. It's important that you rehearse. They will stop you. I've been in a number of presentations where you can tell that somebody did some amazing work, but 10 minutes is up and they're still talking about the methodology. They're stopped. Time is up, stop presenting. You don't want that. I think there's a thought from Adrian. Yes?
Doc, it's a question. When you mentioned that we are supposed to mention our publication, should it come in a slide or just verbally?
Well, it could be verbal, maybe towards the end, just before just after the conclusion, you can have a separate slide called publications, and then you just say you have the list of like a bibliographic entry of the publication, the authors, the title, and the venue or something. You can copy this from Google Scholar, because all of these things that you've published on Google Scholar now, right? And then you just mention, say, this work has been published, or portions of this dissertation have been published at these venues, and this is the publication. Done.
Thank you.
All right. So over to you, Dokowe, I think. And just tell us when you're ready so that we start timing you. Please, for those of you that are thinking of going, please don't go. We are almost, we have the last speaker now. Thank you.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen. Also, by the way, before Dokowe starts, please, colleagues, now here's the thing. For some of the things you were doing, those of you that are working on issues to do with ETDs, if you're thinking of potentially between now and then salvaging portions of your dissertation that have not appeared in any of the publications and you think we can present them at ETD 2024, please, let's do this, right? Like Adrian, there's scope for, doing something much more there. Especially the last objective, for people like Matildah. Well, I don't know if this would be possible, but I was going to say we do an uptake of ETDs. Maybe it may not be possible, but somebody like Cecilia, for instance, as well, the issue of policy. Maybe you can look at coming up with, I guess, a reference implementation of what you expect to find in a policy, right? Maybe it could be based on a modified version of the UNZA policy, right? And then we can share this with colleagues in October. The unfortunate thing about the reality here on the ground is that when you do things like a dissertation or a thesis, PhD or master's, there's this joke where people say the only people that will read this are your examiners, right, and the supervisor. It's true sometimes. One of the ways of forcing people to read your work or portions of your work is you synthesize it into a summary. So please, let's think about this and try and the deadline for abstract submissions is April. We can do this. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ms. Dokowe.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The topic of my study is the usability evaluation of higher education institution library portals in Zambia. My name is Dokowe and Matildah, supervised by Dr. Lighton, Phiri, and co-supervisor Professor Akakandelwa. that is my order of presentation. I'll quickly go into the background. So Zambia has seen an increase in the number of higher educational institutions, HEIs, 53 being private and 11 public registered under the Higher Education Authority. So the Higher Education Authority stipulates that all HEIs should provide facilities and platforms for e-learning. So these libraries have gone about this by providing facilities called library portals. In line with the growing number of academic universities implementing these library portals, there's also a growing interest among researchers to investigate the effectiveness of these portals and identify their usability issues. Usability in this case is identified as the extent to which a product can be used by users to achieve specific goals with effectiveness, efficiency, satisfaction in a specified context of use. What distinguishes a library portal from an ordinary portal is that it augments the user interface with federated searching, patron authentication, and link resolution. This is according to BOSS 2008. So this study sought to investigate the principles that distinguish library portals from ordinary ones and to see if these principles have been incorporated into the implementation process of these university library portals. Statement of the problem. In the survey of the literature review, it was found that no specific research has been conducted relating to library portal usability evaluation in Zambia. Given this backdrop, this is so about the purpose of the study. Also, with the increase in the number of the HEIs that provide useful services via library portals, the relative usability and comprehensiveness of these library portals was not known. This was achieved by investigating the relative usability of adopted library portals that are currently in the universities. The main objectives of the study. The main objective of the study was to evaluate the usability of university library portals. Specific objectives. Firstly, to comprehensively investigate the extent to which universities in Zambia have adopted library portals. Secondly, to investigate key library portal features or characteristics that have been integrated into existing university library portals in Zambia. And thirdly, to determine users' perceived usability of library portals in universities in Zambia. My research questions are a mirror of my specific objectives. Significance of the study. This study was aimed at providing answers to the effectiveness of the information design of Zambian university academic library portals as information communication channels and if there was need to improve and change the current portals. It can also be used as a guideline in the creation of a policy that can help librarians as they set up their library portals. Also, the HEM may include usability evaluation results as a way of assessing HEIs. Conceptual framework. The study adopted a conceptual framework by Ramanyaka and others 2017. This framework was used as a library website usability evaluation to assess the strengths and weaknesses of website usability level. So the results of the study by Ramanyaka and others produced 6 components that can be used as a website evaluation tool to assess the strengths and weaknesses of the library website. These 6 components were efficiency, effectiveness, reliability, satisfaction, usefulness, and accessibility. So in this study, the results from Ramanyaka's study were incorporated in the tool that was used in the data collection, which was the SAS, which is a 10-item questionnaire, which is easy and quick to use and can be used by anyone regardless of their technical expertise. The literature review. So Dairu 2014, in his findings, showed the characteristics of library portals, user authentication, electronic version and traditional library services, federated search, resource linking, and information about the library. In his gap, he focused on the integration of the 6 library characteristics in their creation. Methodology. The study used the mixed method approach and was divided. The study was carried out according to each objective. So objective 1, which was the university library adoption of portals, an online questionnaire was distributed to all librarians in HEIs. This was a census of the HEIs was carried out and their URLs were obtained from the Higher Education Authority. A preliminary heuristic evaluation of URLs specified in the responses was then conducted using a checklist comprising characteristics of library portals. Objective 2, investigation of characteristics or guidelines used in the adoption process. A heuristic evaluation was employed to determine library portal features integrated in library portals corresponding to the HEIs. Participants were purposely sampled, which were 20 from the Masters in Library Science cohort, those that were in their final stage of research. The participants were required to inspect library portals, which were Stellenbosch, Mulungushi University, University of Zambia, and ZICAS respectively, and subsequently respond to questions in the heuristic evaluation. The questionnaire was provided with a Likert scale ranging from 1 to 5, and the checklist was also provided. Stellenbosch University portal was selected as it is a gold standard library portal. Objective 3, exploring user perceptions of the usability of the portals. Convenience sampling was used to achieve this objective because respondents were chosen based on their convenience and availability. The results obtained from the data collection in Objective 1 gave an accurate number of universities that have implemented library portals, which was 3, and it was divided into 384 to give us a total number of people that were sampled at each institution. The quantitative data was collected using the SUS questionnaire. The SAS scores were calculated by adding up the total score for all odd numbered questions, then subtracting by 5. And the even numbered questions were then added up and then subtracted from the total 25 to get Y, then added up and multiplied 2.5 to get the average SAS score. Limitations. The implementation of the data procedure was in certain instances a challenge on the researcher's part, as some library portals didn't give only gave full access to paid up students and members of staff. The experts recruited to participate in the expert heuristic evaluation did not all give feedback as required of them. And lastly, many participants did not extensively make use of the library portals and were not aware of how to go about responding to the questionnaires. Discussion of results. Objective 1. From the census carried out, only 28 contacts were reachable. From the 28 that responded, 2 indicated that they did not have portals. So after the preliminary heuristic evaluation, it was discovered that only 3 universities or HEIs in Zambia have portals. These were Mulungushi, UZA, and ZICAS University. Objective 2, investigation of characteristics or features used in the adoption of the university library portals. From the results in Objective 1, a heuristic evaluation was carried out. Despite the 3 universities having a functional library portal, there were challenges relating to how the information is assessed by patrons for the 3 existing library portals. A similar study by Valenti supports this assertion. Objective 3, the user perception of the usability of library portals. This table gives us the average scores, SAS scores for each university, and from we can describe them using a SAS description. Under all of them had adjective rating okay, acceptability rating scale marginal, and net promoter scale data. Discussion of results continued. The impact of demographic factors on the SAS scores. At UNZA, there was a significant difference between the undergraduate and postgraduate SAS scores, whilst at ZICAS and Mulungushi University, there was no significant influence on the program enrolled. The discipline and year of study did not have any significant influence on the SAS scores at all 3 universities. The gender of the participants did not have any significant influence on the SAS scores at all 3 universities. Conclusion. From the study, it is evident that to a larger extent that many university libraries have not adopted library portals. Secondly, the study established several issues focusing on 6 characteristics or features that are used in the implementation or creation of library portals. And thirdly, the SAS scores scale for the 3 universities fall under okay and good, termed as marginal on the acceptability scale. Recommendations for Objective 1. HEA to include evaluation in their quality assurance criteria. HEIs without portals to implement portals and set them up. Objective 2. HEIs to explore the use of specialized and free open source library software. HEIs with portals with missing crucial services to implement services. And HEI with portals to extensively evaluate how to incorporate them. The last objective, the 3 HEIs need to extensively improve the design and content of the portals. Those are the references. Thank you.
All right. Looks like somebody has been practicing here. I think out of out of everybody, you were on point here. Well, not really on point. We have to think about where these other 2 seconds are going to come from. You spoke for 10 minutes and 2 seconds, right? Thank you very much. It's wonderful. I hope you can. Your voice sounds a bit groggy, Dokowe. I hope.
I have a school.
Yeah. I hope maybe you can get something here, and I hope your voice will be fine by the time we get to the 22nd. At least you're on the last day, Friday, right?
Yes.
Not that it matters. I think we're able to get what it is you were saying here. So time was good. I was taking note of some things. I'm going to work backwards here. If you got your results, right? You see, at this stage, right, and this applies to most of you actually that did quantitative studies. At this stage, when you find yourself talking about, by the way, they will ask you, I know they will, I think. I haven't seen the examiners, so I should check. I don't know who's examining you, Dokowe, but they'll probably ask you. You see, when you're talking about, if you go to the part where, at the next page, the last objective, the last objective, I want to start with that. Next one. You see, when you're talking about things like at UNZA, there was a significant difference between undergraduate and postgraduate SAS scores. The magic word starts with the letter P. The P value must be there. And the beauty with your work, Dokowe, is that this information is in the paper that we published. Great paper, great venue, by the way. That stuff is indexed in the ACM Digital Library, right? It's as good as it gets. They're in your manuscript. They will ask you, and in fact, what people will do is they will even ask you, right, what statistical test did you conduct? I hope you remember, right? What test was this?
For the demographic.
Yes, you're flipping this dissertation. You're allowed to flip. Yes, no, not for the demographic. For the first statement there, because when you say that there was a significant difference, you know how in parentheses you include the p-value, right, and the other relevant information based on the statistical test. Was it chi-square test, ANOVA test, two-way ANOVA? Was it a t-test? They will ask. This is a classic quantitative study you did. This particular one, this part of this objective here. 128 participants, you said, right?
Yes.
And in fact, what you should be doing here is the impact of demographic factors. It cuts across. There was an interinstitutional, I don't know if we did an interinstitutional comparison, probably not here, but there are a number of other demographic factors that you looked at, right? Level of study,
Yes.
year of study, gender, discipline. You're only cherry picking here, right? I don't know why. You only have 3 things you're talking about here. But you must include all of those things with the correct, and again, I think I mentioned this. I'm teaching Professor Kandura's course, 2034. It's an introduction, right, to research methods at undergrad level. And I was telling the students today, actually, I had class at 7, the importance of being accurate in the description of your methodological approach. Clarifying things, because the reason we do this is we want our work to be reproducible, to be repeatable, right? So let's include those things. In fact, even the first part there, the first table that you have there, this thing here, my thinking was that there was a statistical test conducted here as well, where you're comparing how far off it is from, is it the average or something, right?
Yes.
Maybe in parentheses you include the p-values as well. But more importantly, I sat there and I was thinking, Dokowe, you remember when we were looking at acceptability ratings and the net promoter scales, there's actually ways of visualizing this information. Maybe, not necessarily visualizing the data that you got, but maybe you can have, I think there's a graph, right, that we
Yes,
discussed
yes.
at length that showcases these different scales and the interpretation of this information, so that people understand. Like, somebody won't know what okay means, right?
Yes.
Or what marginal means. I wonder if there's something we can do, because you have time here, by the way, 10 minutes here. I think you have to, but what's important here for the statistical analysis, include details of tests. So you explain, we conducted a two-way ANOVA test or whatever, right? P-value is this. And for you, it's just copy-pasting. That information is in your manuscript, really, and in the paper. So that's that on the results, because you want to demonstrate at this level of study, right? And then on the conceptual framework, right? I had a question. Now, the thing is, when you're talking about the conceptual framework used here, does the conceptual framework have a name? It has no name?
No.
Okay, it's okay if it doesn't have a name. I thought maybe these guys gave it a name or something. That's okay. I was going to say include the name. That was a comment, actually. I was going to say include the name here. And then there was, let's go to the research questions. Okay. That's fine. So I sat there and I was thinking, when you are doing your introduction, right? And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but for some reason I've been gifted with a very good memory. I remember these things. But there was a time when, and I suppose I'm grateful, but there was a time when we had this conversation, say, do you think people know what you're talking about when you're telling them, say, you're looking at library portals? Or in fact, if we were to ask the people in here, right, how many of them actually will be able to explain to you what a library portal is? The point I'm trying to put across is, maybe in your introduction, just include a very nice screenshot from the same exemplar portal you're talking about, or a screenshot from maybe UNZA or Zika University, your institution where you work, but UNZA preferably, I guess, UNZA Stellenbosch. And then you explain to people, say, a typical library portal has this sort of features, right, where people can do ABCD, it has authentication features and all those things. People don't know. And you say this in your results, I think at some point, you say that one of the limitations is that people don't use, or were not aware, I don't know if they were not aware of library portals. It's possible that the examiners and the people in the audience on Friday will not be aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So if we can do that, that would be really, really nice here. I'm trying to see if there's I had a comment here to say, if you're thinking of reclaiming time, if you go to the part where you're the methodology under a SAS score, where you're explaining the SAS score, you see, it's not necessary for you to. There was a part where you're explaining. I think maybe it's the next one. I don't know, but it's the next one, because that's the heuristic evaluation. A part where maybe the next one, I don't know, but a part where you were talking about. The part where you're talking about, you're explaining to people how the SAS score is computed. Yeah, and you spent a bit of time here, by the way. You have time, but if you're going to incorporate these things we're discussing, you may want to cut down on this. It's not necessary for you to tell them exactly how you're doing this. So even numbered items are supposed to be, handled like this, right? Nice way of doing this is a standard way of analyzing SAS scores was applied, right? By taking into account even numbered items and odd numbered items or something.
Okay.
Period. Right? If there's still time, you can leave this. It doesn't hurt to include it, but I'm just saying, if you're looking at where to reclaim time from, that would be it. I'm trying to see if there's something else I've left out. We've been discussing this Dokowe for quite some time. I think
yes, we have.
Since 2020 here, so you've become somewhat of an expert. By the way, colleagues, I'm hoping that some of you, right? I'm hoping that some of you, in the time that I interacted with you, bought into the importance and value in what you were doing. You see, I have a confession to make. When I started my master's, I sat there, look at my supervisor in the very first meeting. Why is this man trying to talk me into doing this work, right? I didn't know what digital libraries were all about, but I came out of that master's and I was a convertee. I was converted. I actually started believing in that. I still believe in the stuff I did, right? I started liking it, and I hope the same applies to most of you. And the reason I'm saying this is, I think there should be life beyond your MLIS or your master's. And what I mean is, most of you are working in environments where you can literally apply the knowledge and skills you've acquired. That's one thing. The other more important thing is, for some of you, I think I have shared opportunities, PhDs. If you think that you still have it in you, whilst your mind is still fresh, what does the white man say? Hit the, I don't know, it's still hot or something. You can perhaps do something that is related. Doesn't have to be exactly the same as what you did related to this, right? Please, I hope we are thinking about those things. But I'm going to invite people to maybe ask questions. I know people are tired, 16:39, but if you have any additional questions to Dokowe, but there are no page numbers here, right?
I will insert them.
Yeah, please. Yeah, are there any questions for Dokowe? I guess people are tired. I hope people are able to understand this. I thought it was follow less similar to the present. And part of the reason is because you're literally presenting this work at Africa as well, recently. So I think your mind is too fresh somehow. Matilda, yes, please.
So yes, Dr. Phiri, I think I just want to commend her for the great job that she's done, especially that she has followed time. She's done her presentation within the stated time frame. That's a
Thank
plus.
you.
Oh, I agree. And I wonder if we were to do a study, I wonder if year of study would be a factor here, right? Over the years.
No, it's because in my conference presentation, I had to do a 10-minute presentation.
There we go.
It was 10 minutes.
Wonderful stuff. Great stuff. If there are no other thoughts, colleagues, I will see you on Thursday and on Friday. If you're a new student, it's sad that Angela was unable to join. I sent an invitation to her, our new colleague joining us. Please attend. Malaisio, I know you're doing computer science, but you would have noticed that research is research, irrespective of whether it's in information science or in a completely different field. There's always something to learn. From a technical point of view, yeah, I imagine maybe the presentations on Thursday and Friday may not really be that useful for you. But sometimes if you are busy, what you do is you look at the titles and you look at what you think is interesting, and then you attend. Maybe it will not be helpful for you to attend these same presentations because you already have an idea as to what our colleagues were doing, but maybe there could be a title amongst the work that is going to be presented on Thursday and on Friday that has nothing to do with Lighton, and so maybe there could be something interesting there. Other than that, I will be in touch very, very soon. I think we need a plan for colleagues that are still going to be working with us this year in terms of the scheduling of meetings. I've already scheduled meetings for most new students, but for some of you I haven't yet. I don't know how many of you read that email I sent through, but you see, in life, right, when there's an agreement, it's always nice to stick to it. And what I'm referring to here is regular supervision meetings. There are some of you that have vanished. Some people have vanished for more than a year, and then they'll come back after a year, you know, with the hope of submitting very, very soon. You know, if life happens, right? If something happens and you're unable to attend meetings, why not send an email, right? And I'm not going to probe and ask you to provide an explanation. Just tell me that you're unable to attend a meeting instead of missing meetings, right? Because it turns out that when I schedule things, I block out other things because I know that I've already scheduled an appointment or a meeting. So it would be nice if we kept our end of the bargain here, right? You know, sometimes it becomes, I don't like lying, so it becomes difficult to justify because the UNZA will want you to justify if you go beyond, is it the 3-year mark or something, depending on whether you're doing this full-time or part-time. We have to provide an explanation. The supervisor has to endorse that. How do I endorse that if you vanish, right? But anyways, I hope if there are those of you that vanished, I hope that you have plans of finalizing things this year. You know, it's a lot of work for us. And by the way, contrary to popular belief, the UNZA compensates us, right? So for every successful student, I'm compensated somehow, money-wise. It's not a lot of money, but it's a compensation. But for me, really, the excitement is listing you as a person who I worked with, who has managed to successfully finish their dissertation. It paints a very bad picture when you look at people that I started working with in 2018 or 2019, and they're still doing their master's program, right? So please, let's do this. Sometimes, by the way, even if you have nothing to say in the meeting, just attend. We'll meet for 5-10 minutes, and we've done this for most of you. There's something positive that will always come out of those meetings. Thank you very much. Unless if there are thoughts, I think we'll leave it at that. It's almost 5. See you on Thursday and Friday.
I just wanted to say I'm glad I attended.
Oh,
And
yes.
pay attention to detail. For example, the sampling techniques. That's not a mistake I'll make after today. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, wonderful. Adrian has a thought.
Yes, Doc. Are you going to send right away the recordings?
Yes, I will upload it. I don't know how good my connection is, but I shall upload it as soon as we exit. Yes. So just give it 10-20 minutes and it will be ready.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. Colleagues, thank you very much. And I think there's a thought from Matilda as well.
Yes, Dr. Phiri.
Yes.
So during the presentation, is it entirely up to the students to answer? Is there any time when the supervisor comes in?
No. So it's an exam. I will be quiet. I am not allowed to say anything, even when I know you are messing up. When you're talking about something that doesn't make sense, I am not allowed to say anything. I will only be allowed to step in when you at some point you'll be expected to exit the meeting. The examiners will have a meeting where they're discussing their ratings, because every examiner will be expected to submit a rating, whether it's it's pass to minor correction, pass moderate correction, and then I'll come in and maybe support the fact that maybe this should not be a fail or something if it comes to that. So I'm not allowed to answer really. I will just be quiet here. I'm just hopeful that I'm hoping that you won't disappoint us and the lab, right? Yourself and and me and the lab, I guess. But yeah.
No, we won't.
We've rehearsed here. Hope you won't. Dokowe has a question as well.
Yes, Dr. P. What if I'm asked something I don't know? What do I?
Well, now the question here would be, how can you not know something that is related to your work when you've been looking at this for more than 2 years, right? But if you don't know, it's always nice to just say, maybe that's something we did not think about, but something that could be incorporated as part of future work. Or you could, if you are sneaky like that, you could say, you can provide a very high level response and say the details of that are in the manuscript or something. Or worst case scenario is, I don't know. We never really got to a stage where we thought about that seriously. But thank you for your question. But don't say I don't know when people are asking you what statistical test did you use. They will ask you. I promise you, someone will ask you about these things. Or why? What type of study was this? In your case, you correctly put it. This is a mixed methods approach we took, right? Okay. How about somebody like Cecilia, for instance? What would you say was the research design there? What is in your manuscript?
Mixed method.
Okay. Yeah. So mixed method design, right? Yeah. So these are there are certain questions where people expect that you answer, or they will ask, right? When you are sampling, in the case of the classic Dokowe as well, how did you arrive at the number? What was the sample size? How did you arrive at the sample size? The expectation is you should have responses to those questions. Like that heuristic evaluation, for instance, they'll ask you, how many, by the way, experts did you work with then? I forget.
20.
Yes. Well, maybe they'll ask you, was 20 enough? Because not all the 20 rated all the portals, I think. But they'll ask those sort of questions, right? And this is where you come in and say, this is an expert evaluation. This has been extensively done in the field of human-computer interaction. It's expected, right, for you to use this number because you're dealing with experts.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a question from Cecilia as well.
Yes, Doc, just clarity. You mentioned that we have 10 minutes.
Yes.
How many minutes is the question and answer session?
So usually
the
Q&A session, the timekeeper or the chair is at liberty they will stop It's open-ended, but there'll come a time when they notice that we are running behind time and they'll just stop people. So there's no set time for the Q&A session. It goes on until people are satisfied that you've addressed all the questions that they have. But usually when they invite questions from the general public, they'll probably restrict the questions to 1 or 2 or something. But every examiner will ask you questions, and you better prepare for those questions. Those of you that were paying attention in the past, like last year when I was sharing details of exams, those of you that were attending those exams know exactly what to expect. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes you sit there and you think that somebody maybe has a personal vendetta against you or something. No, it's an exam. Anyway, I think there's a question as well. I don't know if Adrian has a question. I saw, there's no hand up. Okay. So other than that, if you still have thoughts and questions between now and Thursday or between now and Friday, if you're presenting on Friday, you can shoot me an email and then I will respond to that. But best wishes, and please, the issue of, because these are virtual exams, make sure that you prepare adequately. If you're going to be presenting at a time when your area is load shedded, have a backup plan. Go to a friend's place or go to a cafe or something which is going to have power. This is a certain level of importance you should place to what's happening here. Have backups for not just MTN bundles but Airtel bundles, right? We don't want you to fail or something. I think there's a question from Matilda again.
Yes, Dr. Phiri.
Yes.
Is it mandatory for us to have our video cameras on while it's presenting?
No, actually, I don't think you have to have it on, but maybe I guess it will be considered good form if you just, when you're invited, when you're introducing yourself, just switch it on and then so that people see you and then you just switch it off. Usually they ask you to switch it off because issues to do with latency when it's activated. So if I were you, I would probably just switch it on when you're introducing yourself on the title slide and then you just switch it off afterwards.
Yeah, mine doesn't have a camera.
That's fine, it's not required. As long as you can share the presentation, as long as your audio is fine, then you should be fine. All right, colleagues, good luck, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.